Hi, welcome to Standard Operating Procedures for Company Stability and Growth. My name is Lindsey Crabtree, and I'm pleased to be presenting to you today via video, pre-recorded video, but I'm also going to be in the chat so I can communicate with you and you can ask questions, I can ask questions. A little bit about me before we get started. As I said, my name is Lindsey, and together with my husband, I own the company Structured Inc., and we're based in Lexington. We have been for about 4.5 years now, and we focus on helping our customers maximize their productivity by using technology systems, project management, process documentation, and system integration. So my experience is mainly in project management, process documentation, those kind of things. And then my husband has the technology experience. So together we bring that to our customers for a well-rounded solution. And then aside from my work, which I enjoy, I also like to play with my kids, and I like to get out for the occasional date night when I can. And then I'm really hoping to get to travel some this year. We'll see how that all goes. And just a reminder to watch in the chat. We're going to do a couple of giveaways today, an Echo Dot and an Echo Show. So you'll see in the chat as I post things how that works. Okay, and the goals for today's session, or the overview for today's session rather, I want to first go over the goals that we want to accomplish, and then we'll talk about why documentation is important, how to get started, review some examples, and then talk about maintaining and utilizing your documentation. So before we get going, let's think about the current state of affairs at your business. So here are some questions to help you think about where you stand today, what you're hoping to get out of this presentation. So I'll just go through these questions and you can think about it. Do you sometimes feel that you're free-falling when it comes to your processes? A little bit, out of control type of feeling. Like, I hope everybody's doing everything. When you have a new hire, do you cringe when you think about the time commitment of training that person? Are you confident that your team members are all executing the processes as you would like? And here's a good one. I know what this feels like from past experience. Has your business grown and everything feels a little bit out of control? Are you bringing in a new system and just hoping that everything goes well? So for this session, we want to understand the benefits of documentation or standard operating procedures. We want to reflect about your current systems that need to be documented and make a plan for getting those documented. So first, why is documentation important? And I won't spend a lot of time on this because we all know that it is important. But just for sake of identifying terms, standard operating procedures are step-by-step instructions that tell your staff how to perform their tasks. And employers use standard operating procedures to really help their employees know how to most efficiently perform their work. What do I want my employees to do for ABC task, and how do I want them to do it? And they really ensure that your business remains organized. Feeling organized is the most wonderful feeling in the world when you feel like you've got everything flowing properly, and then it really ensures a quality product for your customers. If everyone's doing the thing, whatever the thing is, the same way, with the same results, that can only mean quality for your customers. And then in this session, you'll hear me talk about SOPs, user manuals, and process documentation. And they all kind of, relate to the same thing, is what are the steps that have to be performed to do your processes. Now, there are two reasons to create documentation. And I like to say it's the people reason and the business reason. So the people reason. When you give employees documentation, they're naturally going to feel a little more empowered, maybe a little more respected and part of the team. And we all know from personal experience, when we feel that way, we really perform at a higher level. And that's kind of common sense. Communication from the top is a good one because and I'm sure everybody on this call can relate, any company I've ever been a part of, you ask the staff, what could management do better? What could leadership do better? And they always say, well, they could communicate with us a little more. And, usually leadership is communicating with their staff. It's just that it's human nature to always want to know more. And leadership obviously can't communicate everything to the team because they don't need to know everything. It's harmful sometimes if they do know every single detail. But the thing that leadership can give to the team is communication on processes. And so if there's a new process on the way, or if you've purchased, if you're doing an acquisition, you're expanding, you can say, hey, change is happening, but rest assured, we are investing the time and the resources into documenting what those are, helping you understand how the change is going to happen for you. Today you're doing it this way. We're going to show you how to do it the new way, and we're going to explain everything. That really helps ease some of those frustrations when there are big changes coming. And then a new software, that's a good one. If you're bringing in a new software, hands down, you need to have a step-by-step guide for your staff on what they need to do. And the software vendor will give you, their process, their documentation, I guess. And it's going to be everything that the software can do. But having a step-by-step guide for your team really pulls all that information together and synthesizes it, orders it in a way that, hey, Lindsey in accounting, this is how you're going to use the system. You don't have to go out and read every document that's ever been published on the website of our new software vendor. You can just follow this user guide that we've created for you. And so providing documentation really changes the way that your staff receive messages. When you're providing this to them, you're preparing them for what's going to happen, and you're controlling the message better and making it more of a positive message. And then empowerment. I really see two levels of empowerment when it comes to processes being documented. One is, we just talked about, when people have the instruction manual, they automatically feel more empowered to be able to perform their job. But two, and as we go through this presentation, you'll see, there are people that you can pull from your team and really make them a part of the experience, part of the process. And, they feel empowerment from that. And then lastly, you're leveling the playing field for everyone within your organization when they have this, step-by-step that's the same for everybody. And then the business reason. When you have your processes documented, you're really set up for future growth. If you feel that coming, and you can feel it when things are about to explode in your business in a good way, it's coming. You know it. That's the time. If you don't have things streamlined and documented, that is the time to go ahead and do that. And it's really, you're going to see that it will really decrease your onboarding time. As you hire those people and you're in growth mode, it really, we've seen our customers can report that, they've cut their time in half when they're bringing people on. And they're really getting to have this one-on-one interaction with them that's not so much of click here, then there type of thing. I put the game of telephone on this slide because a lot of times when people are trained, they have the game of telephone, don't they? Where, I could say, okay, I'm training you today and I want you to click this and then go here and then you name it this way. Maybe I really said it that way. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I misplaced a couple of words and it took on a different meaning for the person that was receiving the message. If I have that step-by-step guide backing me up as I'm training the person, then there's no gray area. It's right there in the text. And so I'm not telling you one thing, and then when Hannah trains you, she's telling you something totally different, or slightly different is usually the case. The person getting trained, they know exactly. And then last point is to get the full ROI out of your systems. And this is our favorite thing to say, is that don't get 60% or don't settle for 60% return when you're paying 100% of the cost. And what we mean by that is if you purchase the software and let's say it's $5,000 or $10,000, or it could be $1 million, depending on how big your business is. But the same point holds true, that you're going to be expected to pay the 100% of that cost, whatever you agreed to. But if you're not taking the time to document or to understand the software, understand what it can do, and record that in a way that your team knows how to replicate and has your knowledge, then you're not getting the full return out of what you just paid for. You're getting half or 60% of it. So that's a really important point to remember. It takes time, effort, and resources to document things, but we really feel like it's so important for that reason. Okay, so we're getting ready to get into the meat of it. So just try to, in your mind, recognize, are you a new business with no processes yet? Are you having growing pains and your processes need to be streamlined? Or are you bringing on a new software system, or are you expanding and bringing on a new, business unit? So we're going to work through an example of documenting an existing process. And this is your plan to get started. And I will share these slides so you can have this, but let's go through this. So first, you want to make a list of all your processes, and feel free to do this while you're on the call today if you want, if it helps you. And you might have 50 processes, you might have 2. Either way, it's fine. Don't feel overwhelmed by the list. The list is there as just jumping off point. And from there, we're going to focus it down, and you're going to group by processes that relate to each other, because you can only work on one thing at a time, right? And so you're going to pick one to start with. Now you've picked your process. You need to assemble your team. So think about, if I'm doing invoicing as my process, I'm going to think of who touches invoicing today, because I want to document an existing process. So who touches that process today? And at smaller companies, this can be easier than larger companies. But you got to get the right people in the room. And your first round, you might realize, oh, we should have had, this person in here because they really do this piece of it. And that's fine. Your team can grow or contract as you go. This next piece here, assign a note taker and critical listener. If I could say that one thing in this presentation is the most important, that is what I would say. The critical listener, and I'll talk about this person on the next slide, but they are really the key, because you can have all the brightest minds in the world on a team, and everybody can say the most important things and have the greatest ideas. But if there's not someone taking that down, recording those things, then nothing's going to go anywhere. Okay, and then current processes, you've got everybody in the room. You're just going to walk through, how does it work today? Your job as the team of talking through it, that's all you have to do. You're just there to talk. The person, the critical listener, they're the ones doing the heavy lifting. They're typing furiously while you're talking. And you're probably recording it too, so they can go back and add things into their notes. We're going to go through that in detail next. As I said, critical listeners recording it. They're asking questions of things that are not clear. So you want them coming into this as, I know nothing, I'm a brand new employee. And that's where they need to be. If they're going to document your processes, they really need to take it from that approach. And then they're also going to be making this task list as you go through the project, and keeping things rolling. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. But first, let's talk about this critical listener. Now, if you're a small company and you don't have a project manager for a project, if you do have the ability to assign a project manager to something like this, I would greatly encourage that if you can. If you can't, maybe it's the same person, this critical listener / project manager. And so here's how you look for the right person for this. Look at who's already on your team. Who do you have that is detail oriented? Who's organized? This person has a clean desk. They have things in their place. They will follow up on things that you give them. You know they stay on top of their tasks, and you know that they pay attention to details. You also know this person has the ability to manage a project that has some moving parts. That's important. They obviously have to have the time. And this is something that everybody doesn't inherently assume, but this person does not need to have expert knowledge of your process. They don't have, it's almost better if they don't, because what you need them to do, you are talking through what happens in the process. This person, they need to listen as if they've never heard this before. If they have, they need to pretend they've never heard this before. And they need to take in the information, synthesize it. It's coming from all different directions. And then they're going to output it into this format that you want. So they have to, good listening skills and note-taking ability are critical for this. And also, does the person, are they going to be the type that's going to ask questions? Will they stop the CEO of the company and say, I'm sorry, I need to ask a clarifying question here? And then they're going to keep this task list, which I'm going to show you an example of here. And this can be in, your project management software. You can have it in Excel. You can have it in Word. This is an example of meeting action items that are just, in a simple Word document. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it does have to have the information. So you'll see here, you've got a table of contents. You have open items, items that are waiting on the software vendor, and closed items. Again, very simple. Here's the issue, closed items not removed, and here's the day that it was reported. Okay, on 7/1, Jordan reported the closed items are still appearing on his open items tab. On 7/2, we had a meeting and we recorded that Eric is out of town. He will review when he returns. So this remains open. If something's waiting on the software vendor, it goes here. If it's closed, it gets moved down to here. This is an easy, simple way to keep you organized. Okay, so the critical listener tasks. Once you have this person assigned, they go through the first process meeting as a group with you. And afterwards, they go back to their desk, and this is where their work really begins. They spend a lot of time, they create an outline from the meeting notes, and they start creating headers. You're going to organize the content under those headers, and they're going to build out the initial content of the standard operating procedure. Now this part, this building, this should happen pretty quickly after the first meeting. It needs to, because things need to be fresh for people. After you build the content as the critical listener person, you're going to know, hey, I need to have a one-on-one with Sheila because I really didn't get a full, clear picture of this. So I've got some specific questions I'm going to work through with our team. And then I'm going to test the content. If this is a process that takes place in software, I'm going to log in with my user account and I'm going to follow my steps that I wrote down, and I'm going to make sure that it gives me the result. I'm going to follow the steps just like I've never seen them before. And that's really key. You have to test your content. For the final step, you're going to collaborate. You're going to get back together. You have to review in real time what's happening. What are the questions that are outstanding? You've got to keep those. You've got to keep working on it, or it's never going to get done. Okay, what to include in your standard operating procedure. This is, very basic. Who does the task, how they do it, the steps they follow, the tools they use, the frequency, and the resulting action. Okay, now we're going to walk through an example of what we think is a good standard operating procedure. And here's why we think this is good. So it's telling someone how to create a report. I can read right here. Go to your home screen by hovering over the home icon on the top left of your screen. Or I can look at this picture. It draws my attention to the left side of the screen and it highlights the home button. Now I can read click reports under the more option. Or again, I can just look at the picture. Okay, now the next step, after you click reports, a new screen is going to pop up that looks like this. So this is important for the reader of the instructions. It's preparing them for the next thing that's going to happen. You click something and now something's going to happen that you didn't have to do anything. It's just going to pop up. And then again, there's a picture to illustrate exactly what the words say. And then lastly, they're going to name the report and click OK. I can look right here, or I can read the words. So once you have your standard operating procedure or your process documentation, your user manual, once you have this in place, it's really an important piece of your company and your quality management. So you have to keep it updated. And when you keep it updated, you can utilize it in your new hire training. You can refer back to it when your staff start asking you questions. You know, maybe you've built a culture in your company of everybody's going to ask Lindsey when they have a question. Well, Lindsey doesn't have time to answer every question. Lindsey wants people to learn how to find their own answers. So the SOP is a great way of building that habit to say, go back and check that for me. I want to make sure it's in there, and I want to make sure it's correct. And so that's another thing when people are dealing with errors, they can go back and check that manual for you or the standard operating procedure, and they can tell you, you know, are we missing a step in there? Do we need to improve it somehow? And so that's a big help. And they're, you know, these documents are living things. They're going to change. And so you just have to really, if you utilize them in your day-to-day, then it helps you maintain them, if that makes sense. So very important, you want to assign a process owner. And so this usually is going to be the same person that was your critical listener when you were creating the processes. They're informed, they're attached to the project, they understand it. They can schedule reviews with the team to make sure that these are actually reviewed. And that could be a one-on-one review where, hey, on Tuesday, go sit with, you know, Dwayne in accounting, watch him do his process, make sure the manual that he's doing all the steps and that the manual is current. And then if updates need to be made, those need to be logged and documented. You don't just want to make changes. You do want to make changes, but you don't want to only make changes, because you want to document what those changes were and why you made them. So you want to come up with a log, very simple log. You just use Excel. And then you want to make sure that you have a standard review process. Maybe you do it every 6 months, and then be methodical about it. Develop a method where you're hitting the main points. So is your method that you sit with Dwayne and you watch him and you check it off physically? You have a clipboard. You know what? Think about it and just come up with a method, whatever works for you. So in summary, by documenting your processes, you can stop the free fall. You can establish standards for performance and realize the full ROI of your systems and your team. Sustain that growth that's coming, and ensure that you have consistent messaging across the board throughout your organization. And I just want to thank you for attending this presentation. I really appreciate your time today. And if you have any questions, or if you want to walk through anything with me, I'd be more than happy to talk with you. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. There's my contact. And then there's our company page. So thank you very much, and have a great day.